Thank you, Lisa. I'd like to talk a little bit about question number 3 and how business issues are linked to communications. One might think this is a fairly obvious answer. Without some form of communications, a business can't even survive in the first place. But I'd like to focus on how effective communications practices relate to business issues and how an organization can take advantage of its communications team to help with issues management. In my own work life, I have most often seen this communications function in reactive mode. That doesn't necessarily mean it was all bad. Sometimes you react to good news, like awards won, clients signed, new buildings built, etc., almost as often as reaction to bad news or crises. But I think that the IABC Handbook of Organizational Communication is very helpful in outlining and then detailing how an effective communications team within a business can stop merely reacting to outside forces and begin to anticipate and plan for both opportunities and crises. As the book notes, communication encompasses both inside and outside communication. It lists a 5-step process for issues management, which I'd like to touch on briefly, and then relate my personal experience as to how these steps have looked like for me in a real business. Step 1 is identifying potential issues. As I mentioned before, this can be both good or bad issues that might present themselves. Through a careful review of the company's business plan, stakeholders, management concerns, and current communications efforts, the communicator can begin to predict both immediate and near-term issues, as well as looking far down the road to pick up on some long-term issues that may occur. In higher education, where I work, this type of strategic planning is done year-round, and we take it very seriously. For example, we need to be able to read the legislative mood as it applies to potential funding issues. Sometimes those are long-term, but one example from this semester is the Kansas governor's rescission of 2% of funds that had already been allocated and awarded to us. We had to return those, and it was only through the college's planning ahead for this contingency that the return of those funds wasn't a complete disaster. Once issues are identified, the communicator can help his organization prioritize those issues. Top priority issues are going to receive the most immediate efforts, and if a company is not in reactive mode and has instead planned ahead for these, they can really minimize that ripple effect. In higher education, we can already foresee that more cuts are coming, as well as tuition increases and changes in laws that affect us. We have triaged the most important, and we're trying to be proactive in dealing with them. The third step in issues management for the communicator is informing a position on an issue. This can take many forms, and it can involve many stakeholders, and there's really no one right way to do it, but generally speaking, it will involve many departments, and it will result in a detailed plan of how an issue might impact the company and how best to respond to it. That response is the fourth step in issues management. And fifth, the communicator has a large role in helping to monitor the issue. Issues are never static, they are constantly changing, and new issues are constantly cropping up. So effective communication is important, but it's also very important to form an issues team to monitor these things. In higher education, for example, it usually involves a committee that includes the college president, deans, key administrative positions, and people from the communications team, all with the expertise and authority to monitor the many ways an issue can impact the campus.